I read a report recently that said Mount St. Helens in Washington may explode again, erupt again. Mount St. Helens is a volcano. And after reading that article, it brought to mind somebody I hadn't thought of in years, Harry Truman. Not the guy who was a president at one time, but Harry S. Truman, who lived on the side of Mount St. Helens. He had 23 cats, and I remember watching him being interviewed on TV and that mountainside shaking, and he's sitting there with his 23 cats, and the news reporters and the seismologists, that's folks who study volcanoes, are telling him, you have got to get out of here because this mountain is going to blow up. And Harry's response to them was, I don't believe a single one of you experts. I've lived here all my life. I know this old mountain better than anyone else. I'm not going anywhere. Harry's sister calls him up on the phone, pleads with him, and says, you've got to get off that mountainside. It's going to explode. And Harry repeats, no, it's not. I've lived here all my life. I don't have a problem. And I want you to remember that phrase he said there, I don't have a problem. On May 18th, 1980, at 8:31 a.m., Mount St. Helens erupts with a force 500 times greater than the nuclear bombs dropped on Japan in World War II. 2,500 feet of the mountain are just gone. I mean, they just blow up, that disappears. Ash darkens the sky over much of the United States. Here's a map showing all the areas where the ash fallout took place from this eruption. And no one ever saw a trace of Harry or his 23 cats again. And there was absolutely nothing anyone could do to convince him that, hey, you should get off this mountainside, because his attitude was, I don't have a problem. Now, I ask you to remember that phrase, I don't have a problem. Because if you're convinced, if that's the attitude you have, like Mr. Truman had, then it doesn't matter what I say or what I do or what God says. It doesn't matter. No one will convince you otherwise. If your attitude is set in stone, I don't have a problem. But let me ask you this. When it comes to your financial picture, what if things could change? You know, what if you could be financially successful, or if you are, what if you could be more so? I mean, what would that look like? What would that feel like? What would it look like in your life, feel like in your life if, for example, you were debt-free, or you didn't worry about money, or you didn't fight about money? I mean, think about those things. Just think about one of them. You know, let's think about that first one there. Just think about that. What would it feel like? What would it be like for you if you were debt-free? Or maybe this one, you know, what would it be like for you if you didn't worry about money? Or what would it be like, feel like, if you weren't fighting about money? Well, all those things are possible and more for you. The Apostle John writes, and this is our key verse for this entire message series, 3 John chapter 1, verse 2. Beloved, I pray that in all respects you may prosper and be in good health, just as your soul prospers. I want you to know something. This message series is about you. It's about helping you, but it's not just about you. This message series is about us. It's about you and I. It's about everyone who's connected to Holley Church, everyone who's a part of Holley Church. But it's not just about you and I. It's not just about us, those connected to Holley Church. It's also about our community. You know, what would it look like, yes, for you? What would it look like for you to be more financially successful, more secure in your finances? What would it look like for Holley Church if us together were more financially successful? But also, what would it look like if you and I were a part of helping our community be more financially successful, more financially secure? Well, you are going to have the opportunity to be able to be a part of that, of helping our community with just that. And I'll share more about how you can be involved with that as our series progresses. Now, it's exciting that you'll be a part of potentially helping people change their lives. And it's exciting for me that I'm able to help you change your life in just a very practical, tangible way as we're talking about finances. But, how do you start? Some people are like, well, how do I start? Well, as with a lot of things, it begins with your attitude. The ABCs of financial success begins with your attitude toward money. David, one of Jesus' ancestors on his human side, and a man that God says is after his own heart. God says, David's a man after my own heart. Well, David has this attitude toward money and possession. Here it is. This is a man after God's own heart. 1 Chronicles 29, verses 10 through 14. Then David praised Yahweh in the presence of the whole assembly. O Yahweh, the God of our ancestor Israel, may you be praised forever and ever. Yours, Yahweh, is the greatness, the power, the glory, the victory, and the majesty. Everything in the heavens and on earth is yours. O Yahweh, and this is your kingdom. We adore you as the one who is over all things. Wealth and honor come from you alone, for you rule over everything. Power and might are in your hand, and at your discretion people are made great and given strength. O our God, we thank you and praise your glorious name. But who am I? And who are my people that we could give anything to you? Everything we have has come from you, and we give you only what you first gave us. So David's attitude is, hey, everything belongs to God. Everything I have, it really belongs to God. And having that attitude, it all belongs to God. All your money, all your stuff, it sets your feet, or at least it begins to set your feet on the path to financial success, financial security. And it frees you. It frees your mind, it frees your body, it frees your spirit to really, truly be free from worrying about money, being fearful about money, because it all belongs to God. And He's capable, right? Now, if you believe in God and I were to ask you, do you believe everything belongs to God? You would most likely tell me, yes, I believe everything belongs to God. I believe that's true. But do you believe it's real? Because there are some things that you believe are true, but you don't believe they're real. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, when you believe something is real, it's reflected in your attitudes and in your actions in life. So while you may believe, everything belongs to God, it might not be real to you. At least not yet. My hope is during today's message and during this entire series, I'm going to help you not just believe these things are true, but these things are real. I want to help you, and I want to give you hope, and I want you to help others, and I want you to give them hope when it comes to their finances and their financial picture. But there are some lies, there are some attitudes that Christians, a lot of times it's Christians who know they should be obedient to God when it comes to their finances, and they're not. But there are some Christians that have this attitude, and there's some unbelievers that have this attitude as well, sometimes because they have an agenda or sometimes out of a hurt they've experienced. And they'll have this attitude that they'll believe this lie when it comes to money. And these lies, these are things that seem real, but they're actually not. They seem true, they seem real, but they're actually lies. Lies that seem real, but they're not. Lie number one, all the church does is talk about money. Actually, in my opinion, the church probably overall doesn't talk about money enough. Many pastors are afraid to talk about money. Recently, we got to celebrate with my dad his 80th birthday party, and we had to travel to Idaho for that, and we were there over a Sunday. And so we don't get to do this very often, but my wife, Jennifer, and I, we went to another church. We went to a church where my nephew's the youth pastor there. And when I go to another church now, Jennifer and I give generously to Holley Church. We give over 10% to Holley Church because we believe in what our church does for Jesus. But when I attend another church, I want to give to them because it takes money to have a worship service. I mean, it takes money to do this online worship service as well as in-person services. So I want to give to them for that reason, and I also want to be generous toward Jesus. So I'm all prepared to give at this church, and they never mention money once. Not one time in the entire service do they even mention it. So what happened? I want to give, and I end up not being able to give. I can't give. They robbed me of the blessing of being able to give, the blessings God has for me. And so I don't know why they didn't talk about money in that worship service at all. Sometimes churches get the idea that, well, it's not spiritual to talk about money. However, the truth is, it's very spiritual to talk about money, to guide you toward living more generously and responsible lives. And some people, though, that is, again, a lot of times Christians who are being disobedient to God believe this lie, and unbelievers believe it as well, that all the church does is talk about money. And this creates bad attitudes, or what I call stinky attitudes, in people's minds when it comes to finances. And here's how it goes. If you believe this lie is real, that all the church does is talk about money, here's how the lie goes. The devil convinces you, hey, all the church does is talk about money, so as soon as you hear the word money mentioned, you're immediately defensive and often, sometimes even offended. And so why does the devil desire for you to believe this lie is real, that all the church does is talk about money? Well, he wants his children to continue to go higher and higher, and he wants God's children to continue to go lower and lower. See, the devil desires for you to be in servitude, in bondage to money in this area of finances. God doesn't desire that at all for you. And think about this. How many marriages fall apart because they're fighting about money? Or how many relationships are strained because they're fighting about money? Money is definitely a spiritual issue. Lies that seem real. Lie number 2, money and stuff can satisfy me. Now, this one sounds real, right? Oh, yes, money and stuff, it can satisfy me. I'd be happy. And it seems real because money and stuff does satisfy you until it doesn't. And you see this in your kids and your grandkids. They want something so bad. They want it, and they finally get it, and they're thrilled. They're satisfied with it until they want something else. Sometimes it seems like moments later until they want something else. Then they're not satisfied with it anymore. And here's the thing. You do the same thing. Adults do the very same thing. And you'll just keep repeating that pattern over and over again until you stop believing the lie that money and stuff is going to satisfy you. Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 10, those who love money will never have enough. How absurd to think that wealth brings true happiness. So lies that seem real. Lie number 3, it's my money and I can do whatever I want with it. Well, of course you can choose to do whatever you want with it, You have that ability to choose that. Well, at least make sure you give the tax agencies their share and everybody else who has their hand out, and then you can do whatever you want with it, right? Well, it really does, though, all belong to God, as David said. And you and I and everyone else are simply managers of what God owns. Good or bad managers, believers in Jesus or not believers in Jesus, managers of it. Everyone is a manager of what God owns. Psalm 24, verse 1, the earth is Yahweh's and everything in it, the world and all its people belong to him. And again, every believer in Jesus would probably tell me that's true. Everything belongs to God. But is it real to you? Do you live like you're the manager of what God has allowed you to have? Because it's really what everyone is. This is what's real, even though it doesn't seem real to a lot of people. What's real is you are the manager of what God owns. Lies that seem real, all the church does is talk about money. Money and stuff can satisfy me. It's my money, and I can do what I want with it. All lies. Life-changing truth when it becomes real to you. Life-changing truth when it comes to your finances, when it becomes real to you. Truth number one, what I have comes from God. Moses writes, Deuteronomy 8:17 through 18, when you become successful, don't say, I'm rich and I've earned it all myself. Instead, remember that Yahweh, your God, gives you the strength to make a living. I've had people say to me, well, God doesn't earn my money, I earn it. Well, the truth is God gives you the ability to earn money, to receive money. Truth number two, God can take away all I have. Jesus teaching. Luke chapter 12, verses 15 through 21. He then told them, watch out and be on guard against all greed, because one's life is not in the abundance of his possessions. Then he told them a parable. A rich man's land was very productive. He thought to himself, what should I do since I don't have anywhere to store my crops? I will do this, he said. I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones and store all my grain and my goods there. Then I'll say to my soul, that is, to myself, soul, you have many goods stored up for many years. Take it easy. Eat, drink, and enjoy yourself. But God said to him, you fool, this very night your soul is required of you, and now who will own what you have prepared? So is the man who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. Which leads us right to truth number three. I must faithfully give to God. The number one thing, the keystone habit to begin your journey and to keep you on your journey to financial success and is this, to faithfully give to God. Now, what does it mean to faithfully give to God? There's more to it than this, but here's the most basic level. Faithful giving to God means you worship God by giving to him a consistent, regular amount. This is why we have the option available for you to be able to automate your giving. So it's just a regular, consistent amount. You're worshiping God. It's that little nudge. And you can automate your giving. You can set that up at holleychurch.org/give. Author, book writer, John Maxwell, in one of his books, shares this story about a congressman and his young son. He said, several years ago, there was a congressman who took his young son to McDonald's, and he bought himself a Coke, and he bought a Coke and some fries for his son, and they sat down together, and after he took a drink of his Coke, the congressman reaches over for a fry, and his son goes, no, they're all mine, and he wouldn't let Dad have a fry. His dad was like, okay, son. But as he sat there thinking, he's like, wait a minute. Doesn't my son realize I'm the one that bought him the fries in the first place? Doesn't he know I'm big enough? I could just take all those fries away from him. Doesn't he know that I could go up there and I could buy my own fries? Doesn't he know I could go up to the counter and I could tell them, bury my son in French fries? You know? Doesn't he realize that I just want to share a fry with my son? And as he's sitting there and he's stewing over all this about his own son, he begins to realize, wow, that's often how I treat my Heavenly Father. That's often the attitude I have toward my dad in heaven. You see, God blesses you and says, I want you to share with me some of the blessings I've given you. So God sits down and he reaches over and you're like, no, this is all my money. It's not yours. And I'll decide if I'm going to give you any. And God says, hey, don't you realize everything you have comes from me? Don't you realize I could take it all away from you? I'm big enough, I could take it all away from you. Don't you realize I just want to sit down with my child and have you share with me some of what I've given you? Harry Truman, on the side of that mountain before it erupted, said, I don't have a problem. He did have a problem. He believed a lie that he thought was real. Hey, this mountain's not going to blow up. My hope for you is you'll say, hey, you know what? I'm not going to believe lies anymore. I'm going to believe what's real. What I have comes from God. He can give and he can take away. I'm going to give back to him some of what he's given me. Would you join me in praying this prayer? I encourage you to pray it out loud with me. You ready? Lord, help me live what's real. Amen.